The Enterprise coursed through the vacuum at full impulse power, racing light itself, until the orbital boundary of the system's last frigid planet fell behind her. On the bridge of the reborn ship, Lieutenant Kyle read aloud the astrogator's present coordinates. "We have left the Talon system, Mr. Scott." Scott rose from the central chair. "Aye, and it's about bloody time." He turned to where Kirk and Spock and McCoy stood on the elevated deck by the science station. "Captain Kirk," he held his hand out to the empty chair, "would you please sit down?" "I'm not a captain at the moment, Mr. Scott. As soon as the results of the council debate are known, you will be again soon enough." Kirk took the con as the rest of the Enterprise 5 returned to their stations at last. "12 hours later, flashing through warp space, the Enterprise neared the coordinates the drone had transmitted. Chekhov read the navigation board displays. "There is an object there, sir." Kirk leaned forward in his chair. "Sensors confirmed, Captain," Spock announced from his science station. McCoy stood by the captain's chair, arms folded. "Well, what is it, Spock?" "We are still too distant to tell, Doctor. But if it is a ship, it is larger than any we have seen before." Kirk turned in his chair. "We've seen some pretty big ships in our day, Mr. Spock." "I believe we are about to see another." Kirk looked back to the view screen. Nothing showed there yet, except moving stars. "How much longer to intercept, Mr. Sulu?" "Estimated time of arrival is 15 minutes, sir." Spock stared intently into his science scope. "Captain, whatever it is we are approaching, it is not a ship." "Then what the blazes is it?" McCoy asked. Kirk watched as the view screen shimmered into full magnification and a small gray swirl appeared at its center. "Spock, is it a collection of life forms like the Cedar drones?" "Life sensors are picking up readings consistent with the presence of drones, sir, but they don't begin to account for the mass of the object." Kirk didn't like the way Spock had said that. Over the years, he'd become attuned to the subtle variations in his science officer's speech. Whatever it was he was seeing in his scope, Spock was startled. "What is the mass of it, Mr. Spock?" Spock straightened from his scope to look at the view screen. "According to all readings, Captain, we are approaching a planet, slightly larger than Talon 4. "Captain, the object, the planet, is changing course. It's coming toward us, sir." Kirk looked at Chekhov. Changing course, Kirk thought. Then it must be a ship. Kirk contemplated the energies that must be involved in altering the course of something the size of a planet. A planet already traveling fast enough to cross the half-light-year to the Talon system in just under 60 years. "Lieutenant Uhura, go to Red Alert. Mr. Chekhov, Mr. Sulu, prepare phaser banks and photon torpedoes, all tubes." McCoy was suddenly concerned. "Is that wise, Jim?" "Whoever or whatever is controlling that thing has sent out an advanced force that destroyed a world, and it's got a propulsion system that can move a planet-sized mass." Kirk frowned. "It may not be wise, Bones, but it's safe." "Captain, we're coming up to intercept." Sulu said. The object filled more than half the screen now. It was spherical like a planet and wreathed in dark fog. Go to impulse, Mr. Sulu. Whatever it takes to stay ahead of that thing. The ship shuddered as she dropped from warp space. Holding at 10,000 kilometers, Sulu said. Kirk stood to move closer to the view screen. There it is, Bones. The one. McCoy was not impressed. Looks like a dirty snowball to me. He turned to Spock. How can a planet have a gaseous atmosphere? I thought it was too cold. Those swirls of what appear to be fog are not an atmospheric phenomenon, Doctor. They are drones flying around the object by the billions. Even Spock seemed subdued by the scale of what was on the screen before them. Uhura, are they transmitting anything on radio frequencies? Kirk asked. Yes, sir. Too many of them for the computers to handle. I'll try to lock into the strongest one and tie it in through the translator. Mr. Spock, if those clouds are drones, then what's beneath them? The sensors show that the matter beneath the drones differs from them, though our instruments cannot yet make a clear enough reading to tell us what that matter is. A rush of static burst from the bridge speakers. Uhura worked quickly to capture the transmission. Captain, I've got that signal now, patching it through the translator. The static warbled, then dropped in loudness as the translator's circuits took over. Cold, 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 cold. The speakers whined piercingly, then clicked off. Sorry about the translator feedback, sir. Too many similar messages coming in at the same time. I'll try to filter them down again. Kirk watched the writhing mass on the view screen. How are those drones staying active so far from any sunlight, Mr. Spock? Obviously, they must be receiving energy from another source. Uhura broke in. Sir, there is a strong, short-range subspace signal coming from the object. It doesn't sound like the drone signals. Let's hear it, Uhura. The bridge speakers hummed with a new sound, low and pulsing. The noise dropped in volume. The speakers clicked. Hungry, strange life. Hungry, consume strange life. Hungry, faster. Hungry. Kirk tapped at his chest. The Cedar drone on Talon's moon said we were strange life. And whatever that just was, it was talking about eating strange life. Mr. Sulu, is that thing accelerating toward us? Yes, sir. Very slowly. McCoy put his hand on the back of Kirk's chair. Well, do you think it plans to eat us? That's exactly what I think. Kirk went up to Spock's station. Mr. Spock, is it possible that somewhere under all those drones there is another life form? It is difficult for the sensors to penetrate the mass of drone readings. The drones appear to be in a layer more than 1,000 kilometers thick. 1,000 kilometers? Kirk turned back to the screen. Like insulation against the cold. Living insulation. He went to Uhura. Open a channel, Uhura. Uhura nodded at him to proceed. Who are you? I am hungry. I Kirk said. Not we. Not a hive mentality like the drones. A single individual. The one. What is your work? To consume life. Kirk turned to Spock. The many sow the seeds of life. The one consumes life. They're symbiotes, Spock. Yes, Spock agreed. That would make sense. Where are you going? To get food. Where? There. Kirk was certain he had solved the mystery. He turned to McCoy and Spock. The one must be in communication with its Cedar drones on Talon's moon. When I asked the Cedar drone where it was, remember what it said? Here. When I asked this creature where it was going, it said there. Simple concepts for simple, basic, rudimentary minds. Chekhov called for Kirk's attention. Captain, I'm picking up a configuration change. The creature is altering itself. On the screen, the outer edges of the gray cloud of drones spun out ahead of the rest, like clay on a potter's wheel. The center of the cloud became sharply concave as it formed a well into the hidden interior. Mr. Spock? Kirk asked, as a pale red glow began to appear in the deepest section of the growing whirlpool. The covering of drones is thinning, Captain. Our sensors are beginning to penetrate to whatever lies below. The thing on the view screen was no longer a solid sphere. It had opened up, the edges of it stretching outward like straining tentacles. The glow from its interior was brightening steadily, red and pulsing. McCoy was uncharacteristically reserved. It is trying to eat us. It's opening its mouth. Stay ahead of those tendrils, Mr. Sulu, Kirk ordered. He turned to Spock. What do the sensors show, Mr. Spock? What's inside that thing? Captain, there is no doubt that the creature is alive. Spock turned away from his scope to watch the view screen. The deep red tunnel which had formed within the cloud of drones was large enough now to swallow a world. It flashed with odd purple bolts of energy, but the bolts arced and branched in lines which followed smooth and perfect curves, not the jagged streaks of ordinary energy discharges. Captain, the lining of the tendrils does have the capability of consuming and metabolizing the algae that grows on Talon 4. On the screen, the tendrils appeared to be made of red, glowing gas, or shaped energy. Are the tendrils solid matter, Mr. Spock? Spock stood by the railing, eyes fixed on the screen. Not as it exists in our universe, Captain. McCoy scowled. You mean the one is from another dimension? The science officer shook his head without speaking, and Kirk wondered what had so deeply affected him. Then Kirk thought he knew. Are you saying that thing's from another universe, Spock? An earlier universe, Captain. One that preceded ours. Kirk stared at the thing on the screen, now a mad spinning maelstrom of hunger. A primal hunger, billions of years old. A simple, basic life form that had evolved over uncountable eons to acquire the ultimate survival trait. The ability to live beyond its universe. But how? Captain, There is nothing in our science which would even begin to suggest how such a thing might be possible. Kirk had Uhura open the channel to the One. What is your age? He did not know if the creature would comprehend. Hunger. On the screen, it twisted as if in agony, reaching hopelessly for the constantly retreating ship it wanted to consume. Where do you come from? Consume. Need. Consume. Need. Faster. Faster. Why? This time, the translated voice gave no answer. Instinct. Kirk spoke with finality as he stared at the screen. As Spock said, it's like asking a paramecium why it absorbs food. It is not a conscious decision, and this is not a conscious life form. Spock and McCoy watched as Kirk settled back in his chair. Mr. Sulu, take us back just beyond the distance we were when Chekhov first noticed this creature change course. The straining maw of the One receded on the screen, slowly folding closed, again encasing itself within its living cloud of insulation against the harsh environment of interstellar space. When the Enterprise had matched her earlier distance from it, Sulu reported that the creature resumed its original course, bearing directly for the Talon system. Captain, we have passed out of phaser range. Shall I arm the photon torpedoes? If it can withstand the Big Bang, Mr. Chekhov, I don't think there's much we'd be able to do to it. But Spock disagreed. It could not have survived the beginning of our universe in that form. As it exists now, it is vulnerable to our weapons. Thank you, Mr. Spock, but our weapons won't be necessary. Uhura, cancel red alert. McCoy stormed down to Kirk. Not be necessary? Good Lord, Jim, that thing is in contact with the drones that destroyed Talon. It's probably planning to eat the entire planet by the time it gets there. It's not planning to do anything, Bones. It can't think. Neither can a shark. Spock stepped down beside McCoy. In any event, Doctor, at the slow speed at which it is traveling, Starfleet will have ample time to return and either capture or destroy the creature. Kirk shook his head. Starfleet's not going to capture or destroy that creature, Spock. What purpose would that serve? To pay it back for all the other worlds it destroyed with the drones, McCoy said. To preserve the worlds it might destroy in the future, Spock added. Kirk turned to McCoy. Bones, it can't be paid back. It didn't decide to destroy worlds any more than the shark knows the difference between eating a fish or a swimmer. Kirk looked at Spock. And Talon 4 is no longer in danger, Spock. Remember, Starfleet will have 6 decades to prepare an uninhabited planet for the creature to consume. Kirk put his hands on the arms of his chair and gazed at the screen, watching the swirling gray mass shrink to a dot. It's a big universe, gentlemen, with worlds enough and time for everyone. Kirk looked back at his friends. Neither one looked satisfied, but their reaction pleased him. It meant he could be sure that he had made the right decision. There were no enemies here, only mysteries, the way it should be. The Enterprise came about in space. Her mission, at last, continued. Part 4, The New Mission. 24 hours later, in standard orbit around Talon 4, the Enterprise resonated with the life of her newly returned crew Most of the activity was centered in the cargo transporter room. The huge area was filled with at least 20 different conversations, and the hum of antigravs as boxes were received and stacked through all the doors leading to the cargo hold. Kirk stepped out to the open area directly in front of the honeycombed crystal pads of the cargo transporter grid. His new gold command shirt made him feel as if he had returned home. And he had. Kirk looked for Spock among the confusing stacks of boxes and knots of people. Turning around, he bumped into McCoy. The doctor was back in his science blues. McCoy reached out without warning and jammed a spray hypo against Kirk's arm. There. Now you can eat plutonium for breakfast. Kirk rubbed at the tingling spot where the radiation stabilizer had entered. Is that going to work on the Talon? It needed some modification, but Mbenga's already got the first batch processing. Detailed sensor scans of Talon 4 had shown the startling revelation that more than 2 billion Talon remained alive on their planet, 95% of them encased in protective hibernation cocoons. The combined Federation relief agencies had determined it would take more than 3 years to revive all the hibernating survivors. But by that time, the oceans would be clear of the contaminating algae. The planet would recover. Unexpectedly, Kirk felt a gentle hand on his shoulder. He turned to see Anne Gavreau. Her flight jacket had a new patch proudly sewn on the front. The writing on it was in Talon splatter script. Kirk looked at the crates on the transporter grid. Most were marked with bold red crosses. Is this from the Shelton? Gavreau patted one of the crates. Sure is. Starfleet Emergency Rescue didn't want to wait for the official word. They're buying all the medical supplies that everyone's brought in. Gavreau smiled brightly. Look, I've got to break orbit to let another ship get into transporter range. There are more than 500 ships waiting on me out there. She leaned closer and kissed Kirk on his cheek. Thank you for making me feel like I was back in Starfleet again. Thank you for bringing me back, Kirk said. He watched her move off into the crowd by the door. He hoped he would see her again. As Gavreau left, Spock entered. Like the doctor, he was wearing his uniform again, and his tricorder hung at his side. What about the aliens? Kirk asked his science officer. Any results from the FCO's computer analysis of our sensor readings? A classic symbiotic relationship, Captain. The drone scouts find and seed new planets for the one, and the one provides energy for the drones it carries from system to system. How do they decide which planets to go to? I do not think decide is the term to be used, Captain. The selection of planets for seeding is most likely an instinctual response, done without consciousness. I suspect that we will find that colonies of drones lie dormant in thousands of systems throughout the galaxy, waiting for nearby planets to develop nuclear technology. Then they awake and create the conditions that will provoke nuclear destruction of native life so that they can seed the planets for their host. The page whistle of the ship's intercom system stopped all conversation in the cargo transporter room. Uhura's voice came on. Attention all crew. Attention all crew. The USS Enterprise has just received this subspace communique from Nugura, Admiral, Starfleet Command. Effective this stardate, the finding of Starfleet's Board of Inquiry into the incident at Talon 4 are rescinded. In addition, with remorse, Starfleet offers full reinstatement and official apologies to... Kirk felt hands slapping at his back. He struggled to hear the rest of what Uhura read. He had been waiting so long to hear it. Also, In accordance with Starfleet Command Regulations, General Order 1, Talon 4 is hereby recognized as a planet whose normal development has been subject to extraplanetary interference and thus is excused from the prime directive of non-interference. Uhura's voice was almost lost amid the shouting. Then, as swiftly as it had begun, the joyous ovation quieted. For a moment, Kirk was puzzled, but only for a moment. Spock placed his hands behind his back and addressed Kirk formally. "Captain, the crew awaits your orders, sir." McCoy put his hand to Kirk's arm.
"Now you really are back, Jim."
Captain James T. Kirk stepped onto the cargo transporter platform and faced his crew, knowing that he had returned to his rightful place, where he was born to be. He nodded to Kyle, standing ready at the transporter console. He gave his crew the order they waited for. "Energize," he said. The shimmering veil of transporter energy fell from Kirk's eyes, and he gazed onto a city of the dead. The air of Talon was thick with a stench of rot and smoke. A sea breeze blew up from the distant ocean, where he could see foul purple waves crash against a beach of blackened wood and the skeletons of sea creatures that had washed ashore. Even the shafts of weak sunlight which cut through the overcast skies seemed gray and dull. Kirk stepped forward onto the ash of the shattered world that had briefly borne his name. Before him was what the sensors had determined was the largest gathering of still-functioning, uncocooned survivors on the planet. Its population numbered less than 400. An old Talon female was the first to see him as he took another step in the ash. She had one arm. Her bib cloth hung in tatters. Kirk could see her bones move beneath her cracked and bleeding skin. The female cried out weakly, a harsh, discordant shriek. Behind her, other Talon slowly emerged from the rubble they had made into shelters. A few 100 meters away, he saw the long shapes of soot-blackened cocoons, stacked like firewood, respectfully gathered for a better day, which no Talon could believe would ever come. But Kirk was there to make that day a reality. He looked all around him at the desolation and destruction. He saw the blasted stumps of buildings, shattered girders, fields of blackened crops. A dozen Talon had gathered before him now. They pointed at him in wonder. Some covered their eyes, afraid to look at his alien form. Others reached out with trembling limbs, but were too frightened to come closer. Kirk heard another transporter chime swell. He heard the gasp of awe from the Talon before him. More were coming from the ruins. Some dropped to their knees as the golden light played upon them. There were new footsteps behind Kirk. He glanced behind to see Spock and McCoy coming toward him, already opening their tricorders. A wall of medical supplies had also appeared, still shimmering. He heard another cry from the crowd as the air filled with the pulsed harmonics of multiple transporter chimes. All around them, the air danced with shimmering columns of luminous energy, and from each apparition came another human or another gift of supplies. Chekhov stepped forward with Sulu and Uhura. Scott appeared with a pallet of machinery that could draw water from the air. Mbenga, Chapel, Palamas, everyone had returned to Talon. Then from the crowd of adults, staring, pointing, shaking, not daring to believe that what they saw might be real, one female child stepped forward. Her skin was green and caked with mud, but her large yellow eyes were clear and penetrating. Alone among the Talons, she stepped up to Kirk unafraid. Kirk twisted the dial on the small silver wand of his translator. He spoke into it for the child. "My name is James Kirk, captain of the Starship Enterprise." He waited as the translator repeated his words in the whistles and whispers of Talon. The child's eyes widened. She looked up to the sky, past the clouds, as if they were no longer there. She whispered one word back to Kirk. The translator spoke it to him. "Starship." Tears fell from the child's eyes. She turned back to her people and shouted the word to them, pointing to the skies, to the stars that waited there. "Starship! Starship!" The translator said the word as each Talon spoke it. The child came closer to Kirk. The small Talon lifted her arms to him, and he saw then in her eyes what he had seen in the eyes of a woman long ago on Earth. Kirk took the child's hands in his and lifted her up close to him, knowing that the beginnings and the endings of things were sometimes one and the same. But this time he knew it would be a beginning. "It's all right," Kirk comforted the child. "Let me help." Epilogue, The Dream of Stars. Chief Engineer's Log Supplemental. After 5 weeks of leading the relief effort to Talon 4, the Enterprise has been ordered to resume her 5-year mission. The recovering planet is now safe within the Federation's full protection and support. Dr. McCoy has urged Captain Kirk to delegate the next few days of the ship's warp trials to Mr. Spock's able command. And for once, the captain isn't arguing. He has said that he intends to spend the next few days catching up with his sleep. After the nightmare of Talon 4, I wish him the pleasant dreams that he deserves. Scott out. The ship surrounds him and bears him through space, and protected by her, he sleeps and dreams of Iowa. He is a young boy. He runs with his dog through fields of grain, full of the smell of things growing and of life. At night, he feels his father's hand, rough in his, as they walk into those fields. The boy looks up and gasps to see the sky so black, the stars so brilliant. His father names them, magic to the boy's ears, to his eyes, to his heart, to something within him that he does not yet understand. Rigel, his father says. Aldebaran. Antares. Yes, the boy says. He has never heard them before. but he is certain that he knows them all. The names continue. The grain is forgotten. His mother waits in the house nearby, lights blazing through windows brilliant as the stars. But the boy looks up. I want to go there, he says, reaching out to them. His father's face is uplifted too, feeling the heat of 1,000 suns, seen and unseen, known and unknown. The boy is 5 years old, and he feels a pain in his chest with the weight of millennia, as if the whole species had moved forward to this one instant, to this one person, driving him on. I have to go there, the boy says. I know, his father answers. He reaches down and lifts the boy high, holding him to his chest with love, holding him to look up, just that little bit closer to the stars in his father's arms. And you will, Jimmy. You will. The boy's heart beats faster. I will, he whispers, clutching his father, afraid of the dark and the cold of night, and the distance from the house, but hungry to see more. The challenge, the promise, the love he feels, all cast in him in that one night when first he looked up and knew where his destiny lay. That night, his house surrounds the boy and bears him through the darkness, and protected by her, he sleeps and dreams of stars.
Star Trek Prime Directive was written and adapted for audio by Judith and Garfield Reeves Stevens. It was read by James Doohan. Post-production and sound design was by Stephen Erickson. Original music was by Sam McCallie, Carl Schertz, and Richard Emmett. Theme music from the Star Trek television series, composed by Alexander Courage and Gene Roddenberry, was used courtesy of Bruin Music. Production assistance was by Amy Landon. The associate producer was Elisa Shokoff. Star Trek Prime Directive was produced and directed by Karen Frillman. This program is a Simon & Schuster AudioWorks production.